Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The title for our next session is August 1947, The Parting of Ways. The speakers for this session are Ishtiaq Ahmed, Sudheendra Kulkarni, and Ilhan Niaz, and the moderator is F.S. Aijazuddin. Over to F.S. Aijazuddin, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to all of you. It's the afternoon, so it's going to be a slightly tiring session. I know it's taxing for you, but we'll try and make it as entertaining as possible. First of all, let me thank Amina Saeed and her full team at OUP for such a wonderful organization, for the invitation to be here, and for the opportunity of being able to ventilate our views before you. On the question and answer, just as a matter of logistics, we will not have a question and answer orally. What I would suggest is that you write your questions. Send them up, our people will collect them, and at the end, we can then review them, and I'm sure the panel will be delighted to answer them. But it saves grandstanding at the end, and I think you know why. Let me begin by introducing our speakers. We have a distinguished panel here. Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed Sahab, on my left, born in the year of our independence in February 1947. A PhD from Stockholm University, visiting professor at LUMS, and currently Government College University at Lahore. He's an author of 6 books dealing with Pakistan's history and its dyslexic governance. Sudheendra Kulkarni Sahab, a columnist, then BJP activist, advisor to the BJP president, Nitin Gadkari, also once executive director, editor of the Blitz magazine, which was the Indian equivalent or Bombay equivalent of what is today the Friday Times. More famous in Pakistan, he was the host to Khurshid Kasuri in Bombay. And he had the misfortune and the notoriety of having his face blackened with ink. So welcome Kulkarni Sahab. And just to show you that we are not Mumbai, here is some ink remover for you. Right at the end, we have Dr. Ilhan Niaz. He is a professor of history at Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, and he's authored 3 books dealing with a common theme of culture of power. Culture of power in the subcontinent, power and governance in Pakistan, and the third on power and governance in Eurasia. He was born in 1980, so he neither saw partition in 1947, nor did he endure the Zede Bhutto years. I'm now going to begin with Ishtiaq Ahmed Sahab, whose book, The Punjab, Blooded, Partitioned, and Cleansed. It's published in 2012, and it consists of 3 stages in the book. The stage 1, The Punjab Blooded, January 1945 to the 31st of March 1947. Stage 2, The Game Unfolds, 24th of March to the 14th of August, terminal date 1947, and stage 3, what he describes as ethnic cleansing, 15th of August to the 31st of December 1947. Can I ask you, Ishtiaq Sahab, would you be kind enough? Stage 1 begins with the Lahore Resolution and talks about it being as a turning point in the destiny of the Punjab as well as the whole of India. And then it ends with the 4th and the 5th of March of the riots and carnage in Lahore and Amritsar. So may I ask you just to give us your opinion about that first stage, which built up to the partition of the Punjab?
Thank you, Fakir Sahab. My pleasure. Well, as I say, the book is organized in 3 stages because I am a social scientist, actually a political scientist. And for me, this was a process analysis. Things which happen, the intentions of the actors is one thing, then there are unintended consequences. So 1940 is actually when the Muslim League demands separate states for Muslims in Muslim majority areas of northwestern and northeastern India. As soon as that happened, the Sikhs of Punjab, almost as a knee-jerk reaction, said that if India is divided on the basis of religion, we will insist that the Punjab is also divided on the basis of religion. And the Indian National Congress, until at least the 8th of March 1947, was still hoping that somehow India could be retained as a united unit, but then it realized that that may not be possible. And so it threw its weight behind the Sikh demand for the partition of Punjab. So if the partition of India is the demand of the Muslim League, the demand to partition Punjab is that of the Sikhs, and the Congress joins them. And then it becomes inevitable unless at the higher level, at the level of Delhi, London, and the main actors, Jinnah, Gandhi, Nehru, if they could have agreed on keeping India united, so Punjab would not have been partitioned. Now, as soon as that happened, then there was an election campaign in 1945, that campaign I have shown, I have demonstrated, was full of communal slogans. The non-Muslims were really terrorized in believing that if an Islamic state or Pakistan comes into being, they will be second-class citizens. This may not have been what Jinnah Sahab was saying at the higher level, but at the level of Punjab, this campaign was full of such rhetoric. For example, one of the myths is that Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah, is a creation of the 1970s. I've shown that this is not true. This happened in 1945-47 as well. And then the slogan was Pakistan ka nara kya, la ilaha illallah, which is a variation on the same.
Can I just interrupt?
Yes.
The audience will not know, but one of the persons who encouraged that slogan was who? Dr. M.D.
Taseer, that's right.
Father of the late Salman Taseer.
Salman Taseer's
Please,
father.
Carry on.
That's right, that's right. So now, once the elections had taken place, there was a strange situation in the Punjab. The Muslim League had been given a mandate by the majority community of the Punjab, but since the Muslim League had been opposing the Unionist Party, which had been reduced to just 14 seats, could find partners with the Congress and the Sikhs and form a government. And from a political science point of view, this is a very difficult situation to handle, where the popular perception is that the government in power is illegitimate, but legally it had the right to rule. And so begins the direct action of 24th January 1947, where the Muslim League then raises the stakes even higher in criminalizing the... And out of it then comes the writing of March 1947. And that's when, for about 2 weeks, Lahore, Amritsar, Rawalpindi, and Multan went through a bloodbath. Especially in Rawalpindi, the villages were surrounded, and there was a massacre of the Sikhs. And all this I have documented in great detail.
In that first stage, there are a couple of points which I thought might be of interest to the audience. On the 24th of January, Khizr-e-Hayat Rawana bans the Muslim League, National Guards, and the RSS. And the leaders are imprisoned, the Muslim Leaguers, and Dr. Ghazanfar Ali Khan, member of the interim cabinet, visits them in jail. And he says the atmosphere inside was that of a picnic. The Dawn newspaper is banned, and a flag is hoisted on Government House by Zahida Hayat, the daughter of Sikandar Hayat. We tend to miss these, but the reason I mention them is because these are the vignettes that make your book priceless. May I move now to the second stage, sir? We've reached a point where the government is in place in the Punjab.
That's right.
And rioting has started in key cities in the Punjab.
Right.
And in the second stage, the terminals, if I may describe them as that, are the 15th of April, when Mountbatten persuades Gandhi and Jinnah to sign a joint statement for renunciation of violence. Gandhi refuses and asks for Acharya Kripalani to sign on his behalf. And Jinnah says, no, if you are saying it, you sign it. And then the last part of that stage is, of course, the Radcliffe Award. So would you like to very briefly touch upon that section, the middle section, 24th of March to the 14th of August?
Quite. You see, the way the book is organized, it moves from Punjab back to Delhi and connects it to London.
Absolutely.
So at this stage, after the March riots have taken place and the government had brought them under control, there was a lull.
Yes.
Although in Lahore and Amritsar, low-scale stabbing continued all along. Then Mountbatten comes in, And he's been given a brief which we all know, that is to transfer power to the Indians in a united or divided India. But what is not known is to ensure that both India and Pakistan, if they come into being, they remain in the Commonwealth. So as soon as he comes here and he talks to the leaders, he realizes that keeping India united is out of the question. That is his understanding. And then on the 3rd of June, the partition plan is announced. Now that is a shocking thing for the British to do, because the Punjab governor had been warning all along that there will be a bloodbath if an agreed partition of the Punjab is not available. And so what happens is that the 3rd June plan says that India will now be partitioned, and the two assemblies of Bengal and Punjab will vote on whether they want to have their province united or partitioned. And the process was that the Muslim majority districts and the Hindu Sikh majority districts would vote separately. And if either voted for partition, then Punjab would be partitioned. That happens on the 23rd of June, 1947. While this is happening at the level of high politics, in the Punjab, the situation goes out of hand from May 1947 onwards, and I've given great details of what happened then, because I spent 12 years collecting all this data, talking to people. And so ultimately comes the Radcliffe Award, which is all before us, although my argument, if I now have the opportunity, is that the Radcliffe Award actually supports the Pakistan position, and not, as is popularly known, the India or the Sikh position, Hindu or Sikh position. So that might be controversial, and we can come back to it.
Well, I would suggest you read the book, because it is a very fair, open, impartial analysis of the events that took place. I'm going to pick up again a vignette or so from Ishtiaq Sahab's inestimable book. He describes that Lahore was going to be the designate capital.
Right.
Also, the testimony of Hardeep Singh Malik, who was the ex-Prime Minister of Patiala State, where they demanded of Jinnah Sahab guarantees for the Sikhs. Patiala, as you know, was the largest of the Sikh states, and it was the heading, more or less, the Sikh demand.
Right.
Supposing you're no longer in power then to implement your promises, Jinnah's asked, and please don't hound me off the stage. This is from the book. Jinnah replied, "My friend, my word in Pakistan will be like the word of God. No one will go back on it." And when the Boundary Commission sits, Sayyid Afzal Haider, in his recollections report to you, sir, says that the Muslim League made virtually no preparation for pleading its case before a Boundary Commission. And the reason is that nobody believed that Pakistan would come into being. And ironically, the Muslim League was represented by Chaudhry Zafrullah, who had opposed the creation of Pakistan because he felt that the Ahmadiyya community would not be given adequate protection. We now move to stage 3, sir.
Yeah.
And this is from the 15th of August, independence has been declared. Radcliffe Award, Nehru decides to give after independence of India and Pakistan until the 31st of December, by which time rioting had taken place. Would you like to just quickly summarize that for me?
Absolutely. You see, the last report of the Punjab governor, Sir Evan Jenkins,
Yes.
gives a figure of 5,200 killed and 3,000 something injured, of which the ratio is 1 Muslim to 6 non-Muslims, because of the Rawalpindi
Absolutely,
carnage.
yeah.
Okay? But the literature in the field and my own research of all these years shows that the killings escalated from this 5,200, maybe 10,000 at that stage, to anything between 500,000 to 800,000. And at the end of the day, sir, the first case of what I call ethnic cleansing took place in the Punjab, because virtually no Muslim was, of the 6 million Muslims in East Punjab, virtually none were left there, except in the tiny state of Malerkotla. And West Punjab was emptied of all its Hindus and Sikhs, which were about 4.5 million. So it's absolute ejection of unwanted minorities. And that's my understanding, that it's ethnic cleansing. Some would call it religious cleansing. If you want, I can explain this later.
किसी ने कहा था कि इस बरसगीर में अमूमन हुकूमतें बदलती थीं। अगस्त 1947 में आवाम बदली थी, हुकूमत नहीं बदली। तो you had mentioned in your book, sir, you've given over 50 accounts of persons that you've conducted interviews with, and I'm now reminded of a quotation by a lady called Elie Wiesel, who was lived during the Second World War, and she said, "They do not despair, the survivors. The proof, they persist in surviving, not only to survive, but to testify. The victims elect to become witnesses." And Professor Ishtiaq's book contains over 50 vivid accounts of the survivors of the 1947 trauma. The next author, with your permission, sir, is Sudheendra Kulkarni. He doesn't use 50 accounts. He takes the accounts of 8 people. And his book, August Voices, has Indians, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, the senior-most Muslim who stayed behind, Sri Aurobindo, and Swami Ranganathananda, who ran the Ramakrishna mission in Karachi until 1948. And for some reason, best known to you, sir, you included the Sri Lankan art historian Ananda Kentish Kumaraswamy, who actually specialized in Indian art and catalogued the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. The only Pakistanis you've mentioned, Pakistanis, are Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and an unlikely compatriot, the poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz. The interesting omissions for me, sir, were Subhash Chandra Bose, Netaji, and of course Dr. Ambedkar, the author of the Indian Constitution. If India regards Gandhi as the father of its nation, sir, why does it treat Ambedkar as a stepfather?
Okay, may I request you? Yeah, I think to set the tone for whatever I would like to say, I have brought a film, a music video that my organization, the Observer Research Foundation, Mumbai, has produced. It's called Kuch Naya Kare. I request you to please show the film, and then I'll begin my submissions. Can we dim the lights if possible?
मुर्दों
If possible.
देखी, रास्तों पे चिपका हुआ खून देखा, सूख के निकलती उसकी पपड़ियां देखी, महलों को खंडर बनते देखा, उनसे बेघर होते चेहरे देखे, जंगें देखी, कटते हुए बदन देखे, रोते यतीम बच्चे देखे, बिलखती बेवा माएं देखी, मासूमियत को छिनते देखा, हैवानियत को बढ़ते देखा। एक पूरी की पूरी सदी बीत गई ये देखते, एक पूरी की पूरी सदी बीत गई ये देखते, नफरतों के इस राज में लेकिन अपनेपन के कुछ आबशार भी देखे, नफरतों के इस राज में लेकिन अपनेपन के कुछ आबशार भी देखे। चलो इन्हीं आबशारों में कुछ नहा ले, चलो इन्हीं आबशारों में कुछ नहा ले, खून के वो धब्बे सारे धो भी दे। इस दफा चलो कुछ बिछड़े हुए भाइयों की मानिंद वस्ल की बाहें फैलाए, इस दफा चलो कुछ बिछड़े हुए भाइयों की मानिंद वस्ल की बाहें फैलाए। इस सदी में चलो कुछ तो नया करें, इस सदी में चलो कुछ तो नया करें।
चलो ना कुछ नया करें, इस आज़ादी पर कुछ नया करें। चलो ना कुछ नया करें, इस आजादी पर कुछ नया करें, कुछ मुख्तलिफ सा इस दफा और इसके बाद हर बरस चलो ना कुछ नया करें, नया करें, कुछ नया करें। तिरंगे के साथ साथ लहराए परचमे सितारा ओ हिलाल भी, कुछ गाए जनगण मन और साथ उसी के पाक सरजमीं।
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय है, भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा, द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा। पाक सरजमीन शादबाद, कीश्वरे हसीन शादबाद। तू निशाने आज़मे अलीशान, मर्ज़ पाकिस्तान, मरकज़े यकीन शादबाद।
कुछ तहरीर पढ़े अल्लामा की, कुछ जीवनी बापू की। कुछ तहरीर पढ़े अल्लामा की, कुछ जीवनी बापू की। कुछ नज़्में फैज़ साहब की, कुछ उपन्यास प्रेमचंद के। जो कल थी आशना नजरें, दोस्ती उनसे फिर करें। आंगन की धूप साथ बांटे, छत पे पतंगों की पेचे लड़ाए। बजाए जख्म कुरेद ने, कुछ उन पे मरहम लगाए। आने वाले कल की सोचे, माजी को ताला बंद करे। कुछ मुख्तलिफ सा इस दफा और इसके बाद हर बरस चलो ना कुछ नया करें।
आज तो दोस्ती कर ही ले, आज तो दोस्ती कर ही ले, कल कदम और बढ़ाए। रहते हैं तो रहे दो मुल्क, रहते हैं तो रहे दो मुल्क, दिल तो उनका एक बना। चलो ना कुछ नया करें, चलो ना कुछ नया करें, इस आजादी पर कुछ तो नया करें।
नया करें, कुछ नया करें।
My heart, Amina Saiba, OUP, for inviting me to this festival, and thanks also to High Commissioner Abdul Basit Saab, because of whom at the very last minute at least we got the visa to come here.
You're more important than Anup and Kher, obviously, yes.
The title of this session is 1947, The Parting of Ways. I don't agree. It's not the parting of ways, it is the coming of ways. It is the new convergence of ways, and that is the theme of my book, August Voices. What they said on 14-15 August 1947 and its relevance for India-Pakistan rapprochement. But before I say anything about my book, I must join you in hugely commending the book by Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed. You know, I got this book in Mumbai before coming here. I started reading it, and it was a very, very moving experience for me. And this time, I came again via Wagah border, and this book was my companion. Coming by Wagah border is always an emotional experience for me, but this time, friends, it was very, very painful, because this book, it recounted, it really recreated that whole tragedy. And that must never, never happen again. 14 million people migrated one way and another, of which more than 10 million were Punjabis. More than 500,000 people killed. It's the largest trans-border migration in human history, and the largest killing, ethnic killing kahiye, religious cleansing kahiye, jo bhi kahiye, in our civilization. It's the darkest spot in the history of our common civilization. It must never happen again. And if we look back at 1947, we see that none of the protagonists of 1947 wanted this to happen. The creation of Pakistan or the partition of India was not wrong. That is not the tragedy. After all, the demand for Pakistan was in some ways a democratic demand of a large number of people. And whatever is democratic can never be wrong. But the manner in which it happened and the manner in which it was allowed to happen showed that there was lack of foresight and there was lack of ability to control the course of events, which led to this big tragedy, the after effects of which we are still suffering. हम हिंदुस्तान हो या पाकिस्तान हो, हम अंग्रेजों को जिन्होंने हमें गुलाम बनाया, they get the visa to travel anywhere in Pakistan, anywhere in India. And today, we don't even allow the rishtedars to travel to each other's country. That is a tragedy. That's one of the many, many tragedies, friends. But coming to the theme of my book, as Aizaz Saab said, what I've done is I have collected the speeches, writings, narratives of 8 great personalities. Now, the reason I did not include Ambedkar or Netaji Bose is that I have not found anything what they said in August 1947. That is my reference point. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, Quaid-e-Azam Jinnah, Jawaharlal Nehru, Maulana Azad, Aurobindo. Not many people perhaps in Pakistan may have heard of Aurobindo, but Aurobindo was a great Bengal revolutionary who later became an ascetic and a great philosopher. Swami Ranganathananda, a follower of Swami Vivekananda, who said that the future of India, he said this in the late 19th century, the future of India is a combination of the best of Islam, the best of Hinduism. Then Kumaraswamy, he may be Sri Lanka born, but he belonged to our South Asia. And he has reflected on the future of South Asia. And he wrote this essay on 15th August 1947. And then, of course, the great Faiz Ahmed Faiz. Faiz Saab's poem, 1947. सुबह आज़ादी, ये दाग दाग उजाला, ये शब गजीदा सहर, वो इंतजार था जिसका, ये वो सहर तो नहीं. So we all have to reflect honestly. We have to introspect, both Indians and Pakistanis. Now, before I conclude, I want to say why I say that 47 is not the parting of ways. It is the coming of ways again of India and Pakistan. What was the dream of Gandhi? What was the dream of Jinnah? And what was the dream of Faiz Ahmed Faiz and many other great thinkers? I would like to just, Gandhiji, he says, both India and Pakistan are my countries. Both India and Pakistan are my countries. And I am not going to take out a passport to go to Pakistan.
Except that Gandhiji never took out a passport at all, not even for India. But can we now...
No, just one, if you give me one moment.
Of course.
He also said, though geographically and politically, India is divided in two, at heart we shall be friends and brothers, helping and respecting one another, and be one for the outside world. And what does Jinnah Sahab say? Just at that I conclude. In his address to the All India Muslim League Council meeting in Karachi in December 1947, after the creation of Pakistan, Jinnah Sahab says, I tell you, I'm quoting, I tell you that I still consider myself to be an Indian. For the moment, I have accepted the Governor Generalship of Pakistan, but I'm looking forward to a time when I would return to India and take my place as a citizen of my country. This is Jinnah Sahab. And he tells Sri Prakash, the first High Commissioner of India in Pakistan, who was a very close friend of Jinnah Sahab. When Jinnah's heart, when Sri Prakasha told him that the Indian government was seeking requisition of his house, Jinnah House in Mumbai, very beautiful Malabar Hill, that the Indian government was seeking requisition of his house, Jinnah Sahab was taken aback and almost pleadingly said to Sri Prakasha, Sri Prakasha, don't break my heart. Tell Jawaharlal not to break my heart. I have built this house brick by brick. Who can live in a house like that? Jinnah further said to Sri Prakasha, you do not know how I love Bombay. I still look forward to going back there. This is, my dear friend, this is the history of 1947.
Yes.
We are not foreigners to each other.
We
must once again recreate that future when Indians can go freely to Pakistan, Pakistanis can come freely to India.
Absolutely.
And Bangladesh.
Absolutely. I think your presence here, sir, is testament to that. And just to put it into perspective for the audience, the quotation that Kulkarni Sahab has mentioned was in fact a remark that was made by Quaid-e-Azam to Raja Mahmudabad. And when he says that he wanted to go, he wanted to go back to India, and he saw it as his own country, I think we should also recognize that had he gone back as an Indian Muslim, he would have had the same marginalization that was highlighted in the Sachar committee report. Can I ask now, Ilham, who never saw 1947, have you been to India, Ilham?
I've lived there, yes.
You've lived there? Fine. What is your perception of, you've read both books, what is your reaction as a modern, educated Pakistani to this?
Thank you so much, Aijazuddin Saab, and thank you for asking me to say a few words about August 1947, the parting of ways, from the perspective of a younger generation of Pakistanis who have no direct recollection of either the 1947 division of the British Empire in India or the 1971 dismemberment of Pakistan, and for whom Pakistan as it exists in its present shape has been the only home that they know. Now at the outset, I have to admit certain limitations as an academic historian. And that is that as an academic historian, we typically don't get into counterfactual arguments. And we regard such arguments as being somewhat, wishful thinking or fantasies, which reflect perhaps the nostalgia born out of trauma of those who experienced or had a near experience with certain traumatic events. At the same time, my view of history is neither anecdotal nor is it personality-centric. And while these approaches have some merit and some capacity for amusement as well as the ability to enlighten us about the idiosyncrasies of historical figures, again, I don't think they really help us understand the long-term structural forces that were in operation and have made ruptures such as those that this region experienced in 1947 so difficult to avoid, and such ruptures have continued to happen. You know, if you look at the destabilization of Afghanistan, if you look at the devastation in Sri Lanka, the separation of East Pakistan, so it's not as if we put this behind us. Proportionately, such destabilizations continue in this region. Now, I view the emergence of India and Pakistan as independent states in 1947 as the result of certain historical, geographic, and demographic realities. And these realities interface problematically with certain trends in the political and economic development of British India. Now, historically, our region has known brief periods of unity brought about by imperial conquest, followed by very long periods of disunity characterized by warring states. The unity of the British Empire in India welded together diverse territories through the exertions of an extraordinary imperial elite. But one should not confuse this administrative unity which prevailed in the directly administered territories or the paramount power status that prevailed elsewhere, incorporating the 500 plus princely states into a subordinate relationship with the Raj, with any kind of organic national unity born out of a common sense of identity. So in the long term, August 47 basically represents not only the parting of the ways, but a historical reset in which this region started returning to its pre-British political configuration. Again, geography is our greatest enemy. The South Asian region has proven too large, too diverse, and too unwieldy to be governed for too long from a single center. And sub-regionalism or provincialism in the British Indian context is basically built into the DNA of this region. Demographically, uneven distribution and concentration of different religious, ethnic, and linguistic groups have been a fundamental and long-term constraint on political order in South Asia, leading to cycles of violence and centralization under some regimes, and cycles of violence and fragmentation under others. Both India and Pakistan continue to be subjected to such centripetal and centrifugal forces. Now, these underlying conditions interacted with certain trends in the political development in British India, and I think the fundamental trend in this respect is that during the last 50-60 years or so of British Indian rule, we had the emergence of popular representation and mass politics, and as evidenced by the Khilafat movement as well as Gandhi himself, religion and religious symbolism became very effective instruments of mass mobilization. Now, as this imperial state weakened under the stress of the First World War and the challenges of the interwar period, there was a demand from a section of Indians for the immediate exit of Britain from the region and the handing over of power to those Indians who happened to be caste Hindus and took on the title of Indian nationalists. Their objectives were basically to take over the centralized system of imperial governance from the British and continue that, in a way, English rule, but with somebody else in that viceregal position. For some members of the largest minority, which would be the Muslims in a united India, this outcome was not acceptable, and what began as a campaign for greater rights, then regional autonomy, ended up evolving into a demand for a separate sovereign state, and this demand achieved democratic legitimacy in 1946, rendering compromises like the Cambridge Mission Plan or other things somewhat.
Dr. Saab, may I interrupt just for a moment? Could you summarize what you're going to be, or you're on the last page?
Yes, I'm on the last page.
Okay, fine.
Right. At the same time, there was a real relative deprivation that this demand for greater autonomy fed into. I'll give you some examples from the Muslim majority areas. There's a very good book by Ilyas Chatta, for example, on this. If you look at Gujranwala, where Muslims were 70% of the population, Hindus and Sikhs owned about 2/3 of the property and businesses. Hindus and Sikhs also accounted for 90% of the tax receipts collected from the city. And in 1935, the ratio of non-Muslims to Muslim lawyers in the district bar was 50 to 5, so outnumbered 10 to 1. Now, in the end, it proved impossible for the Indian nationalists to part with centralization, and it proved equally impossible for the Muslim nationalists to part with their demands for practically sovereign autonomy. The result is essentially a war of imperial succession that started as a communal bloodbath, morphed into a scramble to absorb as many princely states as possible, and then ossified into a Cold War, peppered with brinkmanship and crises, with the possibility of nuclear Armageddon added to the mix since the 1990s. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If we're honest about it, the conflict that has been mentioned by Kulkarni Sahab and Ishtiaq Sahab and now Ilhan Sahab was really between two personalities, between two Kathiawadi Gujarati lawyers who were pleading the case for their respective countries, nations as they were at the time, before an English judge. And the English judge gave his verdict and condemned each to living and then ultimately dying at the hands of his client. I'm now going to ask Ishtiaq Sahab a question. So much blood has been spilt, and in a sense, we should have the same maturity that South Africans did with their Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Is there room for that today between India and Pakistan as far as 47 was concerned?
Well, insofar as the witnesses, the victims, the perpetrators of what happened in 1947, that generation is almost gone. Fortunately, we have one witness here, Pran Neville Saab, who's 93 and a Lahori, and his account is also in my book. So that generation which could actually engage in forgiving and accepting the fact of partition has gone. But in one sense, this is possible because all the three communities were victims of the partition violence, and out of these communities came also the nexuses which carried out the murder, the rape, the loot, and the plunder. So in one sense, all communities are guilty of these crimes which took place in 1947. I would imagine that one thing more which I wanted to emphasize very strongly, and which Kulkarni Sahab has actually taken up with great flourish, is the fact that this partition was because of a clash of people at the top. At the ground level, people really didn't believe that this was the solution to anything. In 1948, the Gundas of Amritsar and Lahore met in Lahore and went in a procession. And that was the process of trying to reconcile. Then if you remember, sir, I'm sure you were there, 1955, the India-Pakistan cricket test in January in Lahore. I was playing in it, yes. No, you weren't playing, neither was I. I was an 8 years old sitting there. But out in the streets of Lahore, wherever you went, Hindus and Sikhs and Muslims were embracing each other, the neighbors met. Old men with flowing beards were crying. So at any moment in time when people have been allowed to meet and socialize, the Punjabi link immediately comes back to life. So I have never believed that this partition is the partition that the people wanted. This was the gross error, misjudgment, lack of responsibility of the politicians, and of which the British ultimately must be blamed the most, because they could have ensured a peaceful transfer of power. The 3 June plan actually brought forward the date of partition from mid-June 1948 to mid-August, and in about 11 weeks you wanted to partition 400 million people. How do you manage that? And the evidence I show in my book is this was the Punjab Boundary Force and so on were no match for the enormity of the problem. So what I'm trying to say is, if we let people visit each other, give free visa to the two Punjabs, I'm sure the grassroots reconciliation is already there. Whenever the Punjabi people have met, it has been very warm, very cozy, and Hindus and Sikhs who have come to Lahore are astounded by the fact that when they go to the ordinary shops, people don't charge them for the goods they want. Taxi, rickshaw drivers are willing to take them free. Now, all that is indicative that at the level of people, there is no great hatred.
Kulkarni Sahib, your presence here is in a way an embodiment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I don't think anyone would contest what are your objectives and what are your altruistic motives for this. How can we achieve this commonality of endeavor, commonality of aim? Because both sides wish to have peace. You are now emerging as a quasi-apostle of peace. So may I ask you, how can we achieve this?
If you permit me, I'll begin by endorsing what Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed Saab said about the Punjabi ethos, the Punjabi character. And I would like to read out 4 lines from his book, which really struck me with the power of their feeling and thought. Such is the culture of Punjabi Muslims, easily excitable, but generous and forgiving to a fault. It may be heading for destruction. It may be heading for destruction if the Arabization of Punjabi Muslim identity manages to take root under the juggernaut of petrodollars from the Persian Gulf and state-sponsored Islamization measures which have been brutalizing society for a long time. To answer your question,
yeah, please.
How do we move forward? First of all, it is the creation of Pakistan, as I said right at the beginning, was the outcome of a democratic demand. And today it's a reality. India accepts the reality of Pakistan unconditionally. Most people in India, forget the Shiv Senas and other such rabid people, but most people, they would like to see Pakistan as a united entity, as a stable entity, as a more democratic entity, and a prosperous nation. We want to see that Pakistan remains united. Forget the creation of Bangladesh, that for different reasons. Similarly, Pakistan should wish for India's unity and the unity of Bangladesh. This is the way to go forward. And I've tried to say in my book that the vision of the father of the Pakistani nation, the father of the Indian nation and others, was that let's accept Pakistan. There's a very, very instructive, educative dialogue that took place between Jinnah Saab and Mahatma Gandhi in Jinnah House in Bombay in 1944. And Mahatma Gandhi said that I accept, in 1944 he says, I accept the demand for Pakistan, but let us part ways as brothers belonging to the same family. And let us not be dictated by an outside force as to how we should become separate. Now, for some reason it didn't happen, but let's not blame each other. Let's learn from that history. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh are realities. But if after 2 horrendous world wars in Europe, if European countries can come together as a European Union, as an economic integrative family, as a political integrative family, with no visas from one end to another, why can't we, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and of course other countries in South Asia, let's not call it India. We are not for Akhand Bharat at all. We are for an Akhand South Asia. With India, Pakistan, Bangladesh as sovereign nations, independent nations. Germany, France are independent nations. but they are together in one union. Why can't we create a South Asian Union? So that is the way to go forward. And if you will permit me, sir, you know, I came by Wagah border just 15 days back. I was in China, in the Yunnan province, and I went to the border town between China and Myanmar, a place called Ruili, and they have constructed a world-class land port, 2 of them, to facilitate trade between China and Myanmar, and also to facilitate people going and coming, which has contributed to the prosperity of Myanmar. And of course, China is very prosperous too. And when I see Wagah border, you know, it is so primitive. You know, if we facilitate trade between India and Pakistan, it can easily go from $2 billion to $20 billion. Who will be the beneficiaries? The young people of Pakistan, the young people of India. This is the way to go forward, friends.
Thank you. As a representative of the younger generation, Ilham, when do you see, can you see in your own lifetime being a professor at the JNU in New Delhi?
I seriously doubt that. But again, the thing is that this hypothesis that, again, everything was milk and honey before 1947, then some trouble happened at a high political level, very remote from the ground level, and then suddenly people started massacring their neighbors and ethnically cleansing them. I think, and that after that ethnic cleansing or massacring was over, they can maybe go back to being, you know, let bygones be bygones. I think that the dynamic of violence and this hypothesis that there is confusion at the higher political level and anxiety at the lower level, the scale of violence indicates widespread social and economic inequities and hatreds. And unless you actually address those underlying causes, I don't think that, this kind of wishful thinking actually has that much of a place in a serious discourse. And this operates not only between India and Pakistan, but also within India and Pakistan, because the massacres have not stopped. Look at what India has done in the northeast. Look at what is going on in Kashmir. Look at what Pakistan has done to its various minorities. You see, the basic logic of a communal majoritarian democracy or majoritarian state does in fact lend itself to the positioning of the other and then the rallying of opinion against that other and then the crushing of that other as a source of satisfaction to the majority identity. So there are, of course, enlightened individuals, and those individuals deserve forums like these, but I don't think that we should let our optimism turn into complete delusion. Thank you.
We have 6 minutes. Couple of minutes to you, couple of minutes to Ishtiaq Sahab. Please, Ishtiaq Sahab. Couple of minutes.
I think this position taken by the gentleman here.
Yes, Ilham.
I have tried very hard to understand him. If things happen mechanically, then of course the human agency is not interesting. And that is absurd really to sit here and argue in these terms. The thing is, the structural construction of South Asia, no doubt, was one that when the British were to leave, there will be a vacuum and it will have to be filled. And what I've pleaded in my book is that there was all the indication that had they agreed to share power, this region could have continued the way it had under the British. That was a distinct possibility. And it's the people at the top who give orders, who have the power at their disposal, who can really go out and let these things happen. In 1947, on the 14th of August, when power was transferred, there were 2 partisan administrations who let this murder rise from 5,200 to 500,000. So the state is the very central actor that we have to understand. That's what I've been trying to say. I'm not into wishful thinking. I'm actually
Intended as a
explaining it
criticism of your book.
as a political scientist.
No. Kulkarni Sahab, very briefly, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yesterday I was listening very attentively to the keynote address by your former foreign minister, Hina Rabbani Khar, and she again and again said that Pakistan has not realized its full potential.
Absolutely.
And there was a certain pain in her words. And let me tell you, friends, as an Indian, I feel and millions of Indians feel that India has not attained its full potential. Why? One of the big reasons is that we have not forged good neighborliness. India, Pakistan should become good neighbors. Of course, Kashmir issue must be solved on the basis of justice, on the basis of humanism. जैसे अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी ने कहा था, इंसानियत, जमहूरियत और कश्मीरियत. This should be the basis, and the earlier we solve this, the better. The brutalization of Kashmir, for which even my government is responsible, Indian government is responsible, we are doing grave injustice to our Kashmiri people. It must all stop. We must be just and fair to our minorities. Minorities in India, minorities in Pakistan, and minorities in Bangladesh. One more thing, SARC, you did not bring up the issue of SARC in our discussion. This year, there's going to be, or early next year, there's going to be a SARC summit in Islamabad.
Absolutely.
Let us make SARC a big platform of success of true regional cooperation. And here I would like to say as an Indian that I support China-Pakistan economic corridor, which will contribute to Pakistan's prosperity. A prosperous Pakistan is in our interest. Yeah. At the same time, I would wish for the China, Myanmar, Bangladesh, India corridor, that is a Kunming to Kolkata corridor, to be extended right through India or North India to be connected to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Pakistan should not have just the north-south corridor. There should also be a south-east-west economic infrastructure corridor.
Yeah.
Let us make South Asia an economically integrated union. We are today the least integrated region. Let's make it a truly integrated region. Heart should be integrated, not just economy. That is our culture. That's what Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism says. We are all children of one God.
Yes, it's a pity he talks to us in different languages. Yeah, it's a pity God talks to us in different languages.
You asked a question about JNU.
No.
Just one thing.
Please, because we're running out of time.
Just before this session, a young Pakistani student, he came up to me and said, I would like to study in JNU, but it will not happen. I would like to see hundreds of Pakistanis, thousands of Pakistanis come to good universities in India, and similarly hundreds, thousands of Indians to come to good universities and institutions in Pakistan.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, I'm going to exercise the prerogative of the moderator and take the liberty of touching upon the themes that have been mentioned by each of our eminent speakers. I'd written a poem, sir, and it was published on the 14th of August, 2003, to coincide with our independence. And it was called, Surely We Can Talk Again. Surely we can talk again without using cloven tongues that lisp and hiss cleft meanings, disguising our true intent. Surely we can smile again with teeth washed clean of each other's blood, mold lips into the forgiving kiss that Jesus gave to Judas. Surely we can touch palms again without losing caste, hold fast in an embrace that will keep us face to face as future friends, not yester foes. Surely we can age together, teach your youth and mine what they need to know about how close we came as nuclear powers to committing joint infanticide. Surely we can offer a common prayer in our separate dialects to our separate equal gods. Have we not enough proof that my God is not stronger than yours, nor yours any stronger than mine? Can I end here and thank the audience for their patience and for their interest, and would particularly thank our three eminent panelists, Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed Sahab, Kulkarni Sahab and Professor Ilham Sahab for their spirited and very interesting contributions. And one last request. Pran Neville Sahab, आप बुजुर्ग हैं यहाँ, आपने माफ कर दिया हमें? जी जरूर, माइक दे देना जल्दी से।
आप खड़े हो जाइए।
Ishtiaq, because more than 20 years ago when he came to India and all these people I introduced who are all gone to what Punjabis call heavenly abode. I don't know why they call it. Anyway, I just wanted to point out one thing. Pakistani Punjabis are more fortunate, lucky, big, they dominate the country. Indian Punjabis are the most marginalized community left in India. And those also historically, the great Congress leaders were never in favor of Punjabi. They thought we are just toadies of the British, we are the loyals. The Congress, I am a witness to the partition days. Indian National Congress never paid any attention to the Punjabis. They thought, and that is true also, when the Quit India movement was taking place in rest of India, we young men were queuing up for emergency commissions in Lahore. Recruitment in full swing was in Punjab, and the rest of the country, there was violence, there was demolishing of railway station, whatnot, for whatever reason, 9th of this Quit India movement of Gandhi. So this difference between my beloved Pakistani Punjabis, whom I come specially to be with them, because I don't find Pakistani Punjabis in India. Thank you.
Sir, this is very unfair. Many parties, this is a very sensitive matter for many parties. I know. And they wanted to discuss these things. You did not allow, sir.
That is my prerogative.
Sir, you did not allow. It means there is no freedom of expression in Pakistan.
No.
And add this value also.
Sir, all three are here. You can discuss with them. They're all here.
No, sir, that's not fair.
No.
I wanted to question the historian.
I'm sorry. You should have written it down.
Sir, this is